Hi everyone, welcome to week one of Education 435, Teaching Math or Math for Teachers. We are going to take some time and look at kind of building the foundation of teaching math and some important documents and mindsets that we need to have as we learn about approaching math at the elementary level through the lens of a teacher. So in the first video, you saw the syllabus and the interactive notebook and all of that. So we're going to just start by navigating into the syllabus. You will see will take you, my apologies again. I'm recording this as I'm out of town for a conference, so I will do my best to avoid the loud noises, but I can't stop the trucks. Week one, if you look at our syllabus, we are talking about standards of mathematical practice, best practice of visible learning, interactive notebooks, your North Carolina Standard Course of Study, and then best practice in the math classroom, and being reflective of things that are happening in your classroom. And so this first week, we have a lot going on. As I said, we're kind of just building this foundation of important documents and things that we need to have as we approach teaching math to elementary students. And so I'm just going to kind of break each one of these down one by one. The discussion board we talked about in the first video, if you remember, going into our weekly content tab, going into week one, here is our discussion post. So we kind of went through that a little bit. So you just click on this link right here and it takes you into the discussion board post where you will put your information. Then, let's see, moving on. So setting up your interactive notebook, you should already have that set up from week one. And then you're going to refer to a couple of these documents. So I guess the best way to think about doing this week is, let's take a look at that interactive notebook. So here's the interactive notebook. You should have this already saved in your Google Drive, and I already have it saved in my Google Drive if you've already shared it with me. So let's take a look at what needs to be in there. So the first piece is your school or classroom pacing. So I want you to, actually let's change this to first because you guys are in the first semester. Let's just do this. Current. So that it's current for whatever semester we are in. So let's talk about school and classroom pacing. So think of it as kind of the umbrella of what you're going to be teaching when. So your pacing guide is kind of like your scope and sequence. It might be called a curriculum map. It might be called curriculum guide. Everybody kind of calls it something different, but it really serves the same purpose. So what it is going to be, usually it's monthly, sometimes it's quarterly, but it's just a breakdown of what math concepts you're going to be teaching each month or each quarter as it relates to particular grade levels. And so I need you to get your hands on your school's current pacing guide, and you're going to copy and paste that. If you have a hard copy of it and you need to take a picture of it and upload the picture in here, that's totally fine. But I want to see where you guys are and what content you're covering over the next 8 weeks. And I also want you to be aware that there is such a document, and that, you know, we shouldn't, as teachers, be just kind of making up what we teach when. And there's developmentally appropriate approach to teaching certain math concepts, so we need to be aware of that. And then also be aware of what our district is expecting us to do. As administrators walk through buildings and classrooms expecting to see something, they're probably going to be looking for what's on that pacing guide. So cut and paste or insert the picture here, and we will take a look at those. The next document is the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. So once you have your pacing guide and you know what you or your teacher is going to be teaching for the remainder of the current semester, I want you to then go into your North Carolina Standard Course of Study document, which if you go into your week one folder, my apologies, is right here. And I want you to find the standards that are going to support that part of your scope and sequence. So if second quarter, your scope and sequence says you are teaching addition, I want you to go into this North Carolina Standard Course of Study document, find your grade level, and find what the standards are for addition. So it's important to know what the end in mind is. What is it that we're trying to teach our students, and what do we need them to be able to know and be able to do by the end of that unit, by the end of that quarter, by the end of that course of study. The next piece in your interactive notebook is going to be the standards of mathematical practice. So those are also going to be right here. And this is really what we want students to know and be able to do when they're in our math classrooms. So there are 8 standards of mathematical practice. So as we're teaching students math and they're learning math concepts, we want them to do it through these best practices, I guess is the best way to put it. Like, students should be learning how to do these. So they should be able to make sense of problems and persevere in solving them, reason abstractly and quantitatively, construct viable arguments and critique the reasoning of others. That doesn't mean argue and get mad at each other and disagree. It means critique and have constructive conversations. Model with mathematics, use appropriate tools strategically, attend to precision, look for and make use of structure, look for and express regularity, and repeated reasoning. So I know that some of you are sitting in kindergarten, first grade, second grade classrooms looking at these saying, that's just to think that my little guys are going to be able to do those things at the end of math is a lot to hold on to, but I assure you, once you read the definitions and you kind of break it down and think, what does that look like per grade level, they will be able to do those things through your teaching and through your guidance. So in your interactive notebook, I want you to explain in your own words each of those standards of mathematical practice and give an example, okay, of what that might look like in your classroom. The next piece is going to be Guiding Children's Learning of Mathematics, Chapter 2. And so once you have this textbook, I want you to specifically look in Chapter 2 for the domains within the Common Core State Standards. So most likely, those domains are also going to be the categories in your pacing guide. Not always. Sometimes pacing guides are more specific, but usually those domains are what is listed in your pacing guide. So in Chapter 2, take a look at that. Identify those domains here and just kind of list them out. Then you also have in your Week 1 content folder, Hattie Visible Learning for Math Preface, Hattie Visible Learning for Math Chapter 1. So you have questions to answer specific to each one. So Hattie has done a meta-analysis. He has researched the research is what that means. So meta-analysis just means he gathered everybody else's research and he did an analysis to find, based on the research that everybody else has done, what really works in math and what really are effective practices so that our students get the most out of math. So I want you to take a look at the preface, a few pages that I copied of the book for the preface, and I want you to copy and paste an image of the barometer of influence. So you can take a picture of it, you can Google search it and cut and paste, whatever you want to do. What is it and how does it work? Then, once you have an understanding, so the barometer of influence is how he gauges the impact of the practices that we do in the classroom. And so some things have a negative effect, and some have a very positive effect. And the scale is within school years. And so some practices can impact positively more than one school year. So what that means is if I implement self-reported grades is one of them. If I implement self-reported grades, so students are in charge of monitoring their learning progress, knowing their learning outcomes, setting goals, monitoring their progress on goals, that has a 1 point, I can't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head, but a 1 point something. So that means that, so a 0.4 equals 1 school year of growth. Therefore, a 0.8 would be 2 school years of growth. So if students are self-reporting grades and they're at a 1 point or more, that is more than 2 years of grade level growth possible if it's implemented the right way, and students, there's fidelity to that process. So I know I just kind of answered all that for you, but I want you to just kind of have that understanding. So now that you know that, Hattie goes into, in chapter 1, the difference between surface learning, deep learning, and transfer learning. So I want you to take some time and define those in your own words, each of those. And then talk about how does an effective teacher balance all three, because you can't always live in one of those worlds all the time. And you can't live in both worlds always at one time, or all three worlds at one time. So how do you balance that as a teacher? And how do you determine when it's appropriate for surface learning, deep learning, and transfer learning? And why is this critical to classroom instruction? So as you are working through, again, I will just reiterate the point that I know and understand that the week 1 work that I'm asking you to do is a lot, but it is all foundational so that we are able to build on what you know for the rest of the 7 weeks. And it makes it relevant to you as far as these first few tasks and what you're going to be working with in your classrooms while we're together. So also, just to reiterate that because I know this is a lot, and because I know some of you may not have your textbook yet, you actually will be able to extend week 1 work into week 2. So week 1 and week 2 will be due the Sunday of week 2 at 11:59 p.m. So I will reiterate that in the week 2 video, but just wanted to make sure that you knew that was the expectation. So take some time, make this meaningful, make it personal, find your connection, find what you're working on in math so that we're able to make this relevant to what you're doing. As we get further along in the term, probably about midterm, you're going to be starting some interventions with students, so it's important to know what math concepts you're going to be teaching anyway. So that being said, I will also say, if you are not currently a TA in a school, or if you do not currently have a field placement, I need to know that, because the whole second half of our class time, as far as the second 4 weeks, is centered around an intervention group. So if you are not currently in a school, I need to know that. So just send me an email. So that is what we're working on this week. I say that like it's not that much. I know it's a lot. But you have until the end of week 2. So please email me if you have any questions. Again, everything that's right here, you're going to answer and put right in here. So I will just check this. Once you've shared your interactive notebook with me, you do not have to resubmit it. So I will just check it again. Thank you for your patience with my crazy travel schedule as I try to get these videos uploaded and remade and re-uploaded. So I appreciate your patience. I look forward to seeing you in week 2.